dozens of police cars surrounded an ordinary residential home, with SWAT officers armed and ready as if facing a major threat. When the police broke down the door, the woman of the house collapsed to the floor in terror while her husband raised his hands high and cowered in the corner. However, the police chief headed straight to the boy's room and announced he was under arrest for murder. The chief then told the boy's father to get his son a change of pants because the child had wet himself. When Miller asked the officers what exactly his son had done wrong, the female officer replied that he was suspected of murder. At the police station, little Jimmy was thrown directly into a holding cell, and when Miller tried to see his son, he was told he'd need to get a lawyer first. As a working minus-class man, Miller didn't know any attorneys, so he had no choice but to accept the court-minus-appointed lawyer the police offered. In the holding cell, Miller finally got to see his son. Jimmy kept crying and insisting he hadn't done anything wrong, all he wanted was to go home. But the lawyer explained that the police must have pretty solid evidence, or they wouldn't have rolled out such a massive operation. The attorney then began coaching Jimmy on how to handle the interrogation, telling him to say no comment whenever he wasn't sure about something. The interrogation began. Facing the police officer's questions, Jimmy was terrifyingly calm, deflecting every crucial question with no comment. This left the seasoned detectives unable to get any useful confession out of him. The police changed tactics and started taking an indirect approach. They pulled out Jimmy's report card and praised his excellent grades, but Jimmy remained completely unflappable. When the female officer saw that Jimmy wasn't budging, she pulled out a photograph of the victim, a girl named Katie. Jimmy admitted they knew each other, but when pressed about their relationship, he became evasive and even asked if the dead person wasn't him, trying to act like he had no idea what was going on. At this point, the officer produced surveillance photos that clearly showed Jimmy's whereabouts that night, including footage of him following closely behind Katie. The lawyer, sensing that continuing would hurt Jimmy's case, called for a recess, but the boy's father Miller disagreed. He felt his son had nothing to hide and should answer the questions as quickly as possible. Even though the police had presented a fairly complete chain of evidence, Jimmy stuck to his story that he hadn't killed anyone. Finally, the male officer played a surveillance video. The footage showed Jimmy getting into a heated argument with his female classmate, and then this 12-year-old child brutally murdered her. Miller stared at his son in disbelief, while Jimmy just quietly sobbed and remained silent.